What's up, everybody? This is Jason, Zombie Collector, and I have another video for your butt. And this is going to be another film video, and I'm enjoying doing this. I'm enjoying mixing it up with my sports card stuff. It's been fun. It's different. As somebody mentioned, that I'm less wisecracky, I guess, in these videos in some respects. I don't know, maybe it's just because it's so much different than what I've been doing and I've been like more focused. I don't really know what the answer is, but I do enjoy it. Just because I think it gives a little bit of a different, spice in my channel. So with that being said, let's do the first one. It's 100 Years of Horror, hosted by Christopher Lee. There you go. Christopher Lee has had an amazing career. Now he's just the host, and I think he does the voiceover as well, talking about it. But essentially, this is a documentary series talking about a lot of the classic horror monsters and movies: Hunchback of Notre Dame, Creature from the Black Lagoon, Werewolf, Dracula, what else? Phantom of the Opera, Frankenstein. And they have a lot of the behind the scenes of like Boris Karloff, Jamie Lee Curtis, even Robert De Niro, even Hugh Hefner, Joe Dante, Vincent Price, Peter Cushing. So it's a good documentary series. It's like I just enjoy it. Has lots of Hammer stuff, also Hammer films out of England, as well as of course Hollywood. So I highly recommend this if you like. I love documentaries about topics that I love, like obviously baseball. I love baseball documentaries. I love film horror, not just horror, but any kind of film documentaries about directors, about the movies themselves being made, about actors, behind the scenes stuff like that. I just love that kind of stuff, certain genres and topics. It's a lot of fun. So if you were looking for a kind of an introductory series, this is a good one to get. I'm sure this is out of print or hard to find. I stumbled upon it one day out at a flea market or a pawn shop or something. But anyways, this shows you the back of it. And again, I mean, it is what it is. It's a documentary series about different kinds of films and from yesteryear. And so there you have it, hosted by Christopher Lee. The next one up is not really about film. It's just kind of a cool blast from the past. If you are a 90s kid growing up, if you're a Christian music fan, there was the premier label for Christian music. Like Victory Records would have been like the punk rock, straight edge, hardcore label, which I listened to a lot of those records back in the 90s. But the Christian equivalent was called Tooth and Nail. And they had lots of punk rock bands, lots of hardcore, lots of like alternative, lots of like shoegaze and just really different stuff, pop punk, rock, alternative, and all kinds of bands. And so this was a great videography, and this has like, it feels like 100 videos of the bands on here. So sometimes people don't even know some of these bands were Christian bands. A lot of times there were Christians in a band. That was like the common cool thing to say, especially nowadays. Back then in the 90s and the early aughts, like being in a Christian band was kind of cool. But again, I think a lot of people use that as an entryway to get into the music scene. And so they're like, Christians, they're dumb enough to say, oh, we'll accept you and give you a bunch of money if we say we're a Christian band, even though you might have like one guy in the band that's Christian and everybody else could care less. Some of the bands that they have on here are MXPX, the OC Supertones, Stave Saker, Starfire 59, Joy Electric, Goaty Hook, Crux, the Danielson Family, Puller, Strong Arm, Living Sacrifice, Training for Utopia, Stretch Armstrong, Velour 100. So that gives you kind of an idea of some of these bands. There's more. But I really like this. I love these DVDs because you don't see stuff like this anymore. Back in the 90s and the early aughts, they were always making kind of MTV or VH1 videography DVDs of like some of the top videos off their channels, as well as Victory Records. And, there's a whole bunch of, I could go down a whole rabbit hole, which I refuse to do. But if you like that kind of music from the 90s, you like that kind of, and even if it has nothing to do with being Christian, if you just like a positive message, I would highly recommend finding some of these albums, as well as this. This is a great introductory disc because literally it's probably 2 hours long of nothing but just straight up music videos. So it's really fun to watch. So I highly recommend that. Going from Christian punk rock to 70s grindhouse. You see what I did there? Maybe even early 80s. I'm not for sure when this actually came. Oh, 1980. So right there is Joe Spinell's Maniac. So right here, directed by William Lustig. This movie is pretty messed up. Special effects by Tom Savini. You might be wondering who's Tom Savini. Tom Savini is Sex Machine in From Dusk Till Dawn. He obviously is in the Grindhouse movie as well. He did the special effects for uh, Dawn of the Dead and Maniac, like we talked about, Friday the 13th, all kinds of stuff. Friday the 13th Part 7, I think, as well, or 6 or 5 or whatever. I mean, he did tons of stuff. He directed the remake of Night of the Living Dead in 1990. But anyways, this is a very interesting movie. Joe Spinell, who is the star of this, is a killer of models and things like that. It's very just weird. It's depraved, to say the least. And you might know, if you see the back here, Joe Spinell, there he is. He kind of became famous for being in the Rocky movies. I think the first 2 Rocky movies, he plays a minor character that's kind of connected to Rocky. And but in this movie, it's messed up. Caroline Munro is in this, who's a famous British actress who was also in she was in a James Bond movie. I can't remember which one she was in. The Spy Who Loved Me. There you go. It says it right here. The song Maniac from, I believe, Flashdance actually was written for this movie, but because of timing or pace or the feeling of the movie, they decided not to use it for this movie, and they put it in the Flashdance. I think it's Flashdance. So it's kind of interesting that song could end up in this movie, which would have been like a really weird connection. But this is basically a sick, depraved lunatic going around and putting together women who are like mannequins. He putting them, like, making his own like personal mannequin and perfect woman. It's pretty, like I said, depraved. It's not like a typical movie you would expect most people are going to see. And like I said, I don't want to give too much away just because it has lots of just weird twists and turns. Let's just say this artwork back in the 80s caused a lot of people freaking out because this was the actual real artwork. And in the original artwork cover, let's just say his package was a little bit more like in the forefront. There was a little bit more shades and lines that were created to make it a little bit more awkward. And then lastly is a documentary. This is kind of another documentary behind the scenes. It's called Document of the Dead. And this is signed and autographed and by Roy Frumkes, who was the director of this documentary. He was on site filming behind the scenes during the making of Dawn of the Dead. He was the pie face zombie in there. He had like a bit part in it. And I met him at Cinema Wasteland many years ago during a autograph film, meet and greet. Since then, it's come out that Roy Frumkes was sexually harassing his students because he was a professor, I think, at Carnegie Mellon or somewhere like that in Pittsburgh. He still lived in Pittsburgh. And I think he might have fell off the face of the earth. We used to be Facebook friends. But then there was all these students that were saying that he was harassing them. And I will say it's kind of interesting because when I met him, one of the times I met him, he had a film student with him, and her and I hit it off. She was from Korea, and I had just came back from Korea, and we were speaking. And I could tell he was really perturbed that she would show me all this interest because he kept referring to her as his assistant and not his girlfriend or anything like that. But he was like watching everything that we were doing. And was always right around. It was like kept asking me how I knew all about Korea and all this stuff. So it was an interesting experience to say the least. And he was nice enough and very pleasant or whatever. But he had gotten into some trouble. Like fast forward to 12, 13 years later, when the whole like Me Too movement started, he got caught up in it. And I'm not at all defending what he did. I wasn't there. Just that happened. there you go. But to get back to this, he directed this. This was like an hour and a half long, about an hour long, hour and a half long documentary about behind the scenes. And I just really liked it. So if you're Dawn of the Dead is my favorite movie of all time, especially horror, but maybe even across the board. And I've met pretty much the entire cast and crew of Dawn of the Dead at some point or another. And so if you're like, if you're a fan of film, and then you have a chance to meet the people or see behind the scenes of what was going on during the time they were making it, I mean, you're going to eat that up. You're just going to keep consuming that as much as you can. So it was an awesome opportunity to continue to build your knowledge based on that. So here I didn't even realize it said, "Nice seeing you, Jason. Best Roy Frumke" on the back. I mean, I didn't realize, I don't remember what it said. It's been so long. And this is the special edition released by Synapse Film. And again, guys, there's a bunch of behind the scenes features on this one. But again, this is kind of shows you that you're able to track down other information. You'll see in my other videos where if you really like a film, usually there's other people talking about the behind the scenes. They'll do documentaries. Sometimes it's on the disc. Sometimes it's an additional disc. Sometimes they make a whole separate DVD, like in the case of Document of the Dead, where you can get more information. So if you're real just insatiable about film and about certain types of films, you can a lot of times find more information out there. That's something I like to do, is try to find more information about films that I love or directors that I love. So hopefully this was very interesting for you. And if it wasn't, well, you always could have just clicked off. So there you go. I appreciate it. Let me know what you think. Until next time, deuces.